I am Laura Dixon, and you are listening to the Naturally Thin for Life podcast, episode number 135, Painless Habit Change. Welcome to the Naturally Thin for Life podcast. I'm going to teach you how to get out of your diet brain so that you too can be naturally thin for life. No counting, restricting, or obsessing. I am going to take the mystery out of it for you so that you can become naturally thin starting today. Are you ready? Let's do this. All right, friends, today let's talk about changing some habits and how to do it in a way that isn't super painful. I think so often we think making a habit change requires so much of us. It requires so much energy and effort and willpower, and we're just like exhausted sometimes thinking about it. And it so then can create like this idea of it being really painful. And so today I want to talk about painless habit change and how to create a painless habit change. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's not uncomfortable, but we're going to dive into what's the difference between discomfort, because it's just something different, and having a quote unquote painful habit change. Because we've all had the experience of waking up in the morning with the best intention, telling ourselves, today's the day I'm done with my 3 p.m. snack habit that leads me to feeling uncomfortable because it starts with a few tortilla chips and ends in a handful of M&Ms. Or we tell ourselves, today's the day I'm done with my late night snacking and waking up like I have a food hangover. Or today's the day I'm working out for an hour every single day forever until I die, right? Or whatever we tell ourselves that like today is the day. We know we've all had this experience where we wake up with like this declaration of like, today's the day, or right, we'll tell ourselves tomorrow's the day that I'm doing this thing and I'm making this change and I'm implementing this new habit for ourselves. And we are maybe excited about it and we wake up all jazzed up about it. We're excited and energized and ready to go. And maybe we hit the gym and go to the bar class or go for a nice walk outside before we go to work. And we're like, yes, see, I'm doing it. And then maybe you do actually start to make a change, right? You're taking the action towards the new habit you want. And maybe it lasts for a few days, a few weeks, or maybe even a month or two. And then sometimes we all have those moments where it maybe lasts a couple of hours. And then it seems like the inevitable eventually always happens. It gets hard. And it starts to feel too hard to keep going. And that excitement you woke up with in the morning about today being the day, and it's drained and gone at 8 p.m. when you start eating the chocolate that turns into pretzels, that turns into popcorn again. And then we tell ourselves, like, this is just too hard. I can't do this anymore. So I want to talk today about why we think change is so hard and give you a tool to implement to create painless habit change. And I think one of the biggest reasons we think change is so hard is we tell ourselves the lie that we need more willpower, we need more energy, we need more oomph, we need more motivation. I can't tell you how many times I hear people say, well, I just need to be a little bit more motivated. That is not true. The reason you don't create long-lasting habit change is often because you don't have the tools to deal with the quote-unquote hard. And it's why I am doing a live training this week. So if you're listening to this real time, you can still register to attend. It is a live training this Thursday, July 28th, called Break Any Eating Habit. And in that live training, I'm going to guide you more in depth in this step-by-step process to really do this, to create a habit change by breaking any habit that isn't serving you. And you can also get your specific questions answered and get any live coaching with me on that live training. And in preparation for that training, I wanted to share some of that with you here on this episode. And so if you're listening to this real time and you still want to attend, make sure you head over to lauradixoncoaching.com/habit to register to come with us. And for those of you that are potentially listening to this after the episode has been released, I want to guide you through and give you a taste of what we're doing on that training. Because so many of us, and I see this especially in those of us, and I say us because self-included, this is very much sort of what I have worked through and spent the last few years kind of working through in my own mind is those of us that have this overthinking, overanalyzing, perfectionist, super intellectual, super ambitious. We're just like in our heads all of the time. You know who you are when you hear me say that. We often struggle with our emotions. We often struggle with allowing ourselves to feel our feelings. But here's the thing with painless habit change. The only thing that creates the pain is us fighting a feeling, us fighting an emotion. The hard part, when you start and wake up in the morning and you're so energized and you're so excited and you're so motivated, you cannot carry that all the way through to 8 p.m. or maybe you do for a couple of days. But whenever like the rubber meets the road and you get to where it feels quote unquote too hard, remember it only feels that way, is because there is an old emotional pattern that happens in that moment. And when you go to make a change and you come up against an emotion that feels hard, but you're an overthinker, overanalyzer, not feeling person, and you don't have the tool to deal with that feeling, then it does actually feel too hard because you don't know how to work through the hard without trying to force it and willpower and like, ooh, grit and grind your way through. So your emotions and your feelings, I use those words interchangeably here on the podcast, your emotions and feelings are running your habitual shows, whether or not you're aware of it. It is how your brain teaches your body what to do on autopilot. So you have thoughts that happen in your brain and you have feelings, emotions that happen in your body. It's how your body memorizes certain behaviors, certain action. So your body then actually memorizes particular emotions that drive your habitual actions. So I'm going to talk you through a little bit of how I want you to think about your brain, but we all know this through our own experience, right? If you ask yourself, how would someone describe you as a person? How would they describe kind of just your habits of who you are? For so many of us, self included, I would have told myself years ago, like, I'm just a stress ball. I'm an anxious ball. And I was so used to, my body had so memorized the emotions of anxiety and stress and pressure and rush and urgency, those very high, buzzy, high frequency, sort of like always kind of like on the go emotions. And our bodies memorize those emotions and then they drive our habitual actions. So whether or not you're aware of those emotions, even if you tell yourself, well, I'm just not a feeling person, those emotions, those feelings, they are running your habitual actions. And it's why you may start out with the best intention when you wake up in the morning, but when 8 p.m. rolls around and you're feeling really restless or you're feeling really anxious or you're feeling stressed out and you've created a habit of restlessness leading to snacks, you're going to come up to this point where it feels too hard, but only because you don't know how to calm down and change the restlessness. So before we get into how to do that, I want you to think about your brains as 3 brains. I love how Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this, and I'm going to share it with you briefly here, and then we're going to use it in the context of creating a painless habit change. So when you think about the 3 parts of our brains that I want you to focus on, and you can, of course, go Google it and get an image if that helps you to actually see it, but I want you to think about the first part of your brain as your neocortex. It's your thinking brain. It's the gray, thick matter part. It's the part of our brain that is the most evolved in humans. And it's the part of our brain that includes our frontal lobe. It's the part of our brain that allows us in our frontal lobe to think about what we're thinking about. I didn't learn until recently that we call that metacognition. I was like, of course I can watch myself think. Of course I can observe myself think and watch what I'm thinking about. And scientists call that metacognition, where you think about what you're thinking about. And our neocortex and our frontal lobe is also where we can plan and think about the future and invent and create and anticipate the vacation coming up. It houses all of those parts of our brain. It's also the part of our brain that learns new information, that's hearing me talk to you right now, taking in the information and enjoying learning new things. And then we have the second part of our brain is our limbic brain. It includes our emotional brain and our behavioral habit brain, and especially houses those emotional habits interactions related to survival. I want to say ... such as eating. And so that emotional part of our brain is, I think it's the size of like a lemon or a small fist in our brain. And it's kind of in the more central part of our brain. So if you're imagining our brain, right, the thick kind of gray matter that we imagine from the outside is our neocortex, houses our prefrontal lobe, which is in our kind of forehead region. And then we have our limbic brain, kind of a lemon small fist size in the middle of our brain. And that limbic brain, our emotional behavioral habit center, if we will call it that, is also responsible for the formation of our memories and our associations based on our emotions, right? So we have stronger memories when we have a stronger emotional response, right? Think about some of your most vivid memories. They have a very strong emotion tied to them, right? When you think about the birth of a child, or you think about a really bad fight with someone, or you think about getting married, right? We all have very strong emotional associations with those vivid memories. Our neocortex, thinking brain, limbic brain, think of it as your feeling, emotional, habitual brain, and then our cerebellum. And our cerebellum is where our subconscious lies. It's the part of you that is just kind of where it feels so familiar, but you kind of just don't know how it got there. It's like how I think about it. And it's the things that you do that you don't even know necessarily how you do them. So it's the part of you that just knows how to walk, right? You don't get up from a chair and think about all the muscles that need to go into play to actually start walking. And you don't consciously think with your neocortex, your conscious brain. You don't consciously think, okay, now I have to, bend my knee and lift up my foot and move these muscles and then put it forward. We don't think, we just walk, right? So our cerebellum houses things like walking or us talking, how we use our language, right? And so if you think about, we learn maybe a new word, or we learn, like when I was talking about metacognition, right? In my neocortex, I learn that, and then it goes and it starts to maybe become a behavior or a habit with a certain emotion maybe that drives that. And I use my limbic brain to use the word, let's say, over and over again. And this is how we learn language. And I maybe use that word over and over again, right? And then I just become a person that uses the word, let's say. And so our cerebellum is where we just are the beer. We are the beer of talking, of walking, of riding a bike, of swimming, where we just we don't even have to think about it, right? It's like when we've all had that experience of driving home in the car and you're like, I mean, I know I drove home, obviously. I know I was paying attention, but I don't necessarily remember how I got here. And not maybe the safest way to go, but right? It's like we're just so used to maybe driving the same path, driving on the same road, that it does actually feel like something kind of takes over subconsciously. And our cerebellum is also where we maybe can not actually remember a phone number. So I remember one of my best friends as a child. We lived pretty close together and we would often call each other on landlines and decide when we were going to go see each other, and we would go walk to each other's houses. So I remember calling her a lot. I could not tell you right now what her phone number is, but I know if you gave me a phone, I would be able to dial it. And I actually have done that before. And I was just like, that's so wild, right? I can't consciously think about it, but if you gave me a phone by muscle memory, I would be able to dial it. And so when you think about these three parts of our brain, our neocortex is our thinking brain, our limbic brain is our emotional brain, and our cerebellum is our subconscious. You can think about them as thinking, doing, and being, right? And we've all, maybe not all, but many of you have probably heard about that, right? We think and we do and we just be. And our doing brain, our limbic brain, bridges the gap between our intention, our thinking brain, and our subconscious, our cerebellum, our being brain, right? So we have an intention, we wake up, like I said, and that neocortex is like, yes, today's the day. We're in our thinking brain. We're going to make the change. And our being brain is our cerebellum, is our subconscious, where we just want to be the person that enjoys working out. We just want to be the person that doesn't think about food when we're not hungry. We just want to be the person that eats a snack at night and doesn't eat 5 snacks and just enjoys the TV show or talking with her spouse or playing with her kids. And she just doesn't have to think about losing weight all of the time. And how you bridge that gap is with your doing brain, with your emotional brain, with your limbic brain. It's how you bridge the gap between your intention and your being. And there's another phrase Dr. Joe Dispenza says, and I just love it. It's one of my favorite things he says. And he says, if thinking then is the language of your brain, then emotions are the language of your body. And it is how they communicate. So we have thoughts in our brain. We have neurons that are firing together. They then cause, when we have a very strong neural connection, a very strong thought process, they then cause neuropeptides to be released into our body and we feel an emotion. And it's how then we create memorized emotions and memorized habits. And our body memorizes particular emotions because we've used them over and over again. And it gets really used to them. And sometimes they become like a little bit like a lovey or a wubby, right? Where our body chemically gets so used to, so memorized, so familiar with feelings and emotions like restlessness, pressure, stress, anxiety. And our body, even though they're so familiar and they're so memorized, we don't love the experience of feeling pressure and restless and stressed and anxious all of the time. And so then we develop a habit of using food to escape particular emotions. So this is why you can have the best intentions at 6 a.m. when you get out of bed. But then 8 p.m. rolls around and there just seems to be that pressure and restlessness again. You're sitting there on the couch watching a TV show and you're like, I don't even know why I'm feeling restless. There isn't anything wrong with you. You don't need more motivation. All you need to know is how to release yourself from that pressure and from that restlessness. And most likely, it's simply a memorized emotion. So when you know how to release these memorized emotions that are not serving you, that are driving, in particular, eating habits that you don't want, then you can use that same ability of your body to memorize emotions to develop and create habits that do serve you. So that then what's running in the background of your subconscious, what's running in your cerebellum, when you just are the person who is naturally thin, you can use that part of your brain to just auto run habits that you do want. So to have painless habit change, I want to reiterate, that doesn't necessarily mean it's like comfy cozy all of the time. So painless habit change does not equal comfortable and fun always. Sometimes it can be a little bit uncomfortable, but discomfort in and of itself does not equal pain. I'm going to give you a brief analogy. Think about lifting weights or exercise, right? That may be uncomfortable, especially in the beginning. And maybe even still, it might be slightly uncomfortable, but you don't experience pain just because you're experiencing slight discomfort. And actually, discomfort, when you expect it and you embrace it and you know there's strength and magic and freedom on the other side, you may actually start to look forward to those moments of discomfort. So I go to exercise classes, I go to a bar studio. It's just amazing. I love it. It's always a different type of class I go to. I usually go to a strength training class or they do this cardio kickboxing class. And I never know what props we're going to use. I never know what exercises we're going to do. I never know how long of each exercise we're going to do. And I don't need to. I know it might be a little uncomfortable, but I embrace the discomfort. I expect the discomfort and I genuinely love it. And that slight discomfort in that exercise class, it does not equal pain. So the quote unquote pain of habit change, if I go back to my 8 p.m. restless snack example, the quote unquote pain only occurs when two things are happening. One, you think something is wrong with you, that you don't have enough willpower or oomph or gusto or motivation to make the change. And then you think that you are the problem rather than, oh, I've just memorized an emotion. And that's why I keep habituating this habit that's not serving me. That's the first reason why we have quote unquote painful habit change. And the only other reason that ever leads to quote unquote painful habit change is that you don't have the tools to embrace the discomfort. So when you understand that there's nothing actually wrong with me, I've just memorized an emotion, I've created a subconscious habit that doesn't serve me. This is not a willpower, more motivation, more excitement solution I need to find. And then from that understanding, you then have the tools to embrace the discomfort. Friend, that is all you need for a painless habit change. Now, I've talked about some of the ways to go about this before, how to embrace that discomfort, how to release yourself from the emotion that's driving the habit. So you can go back to the episode on how to feel. If you want more on that, you can come to the live training this week. And I'm going to talk you through a little bit of it right here. How you go about doing this, the best way I know how to do this is to name the emotion. So I'm going to go back to my restlessness example again. Just pick a habit you want to break. Think about the emotion that your body has just memorized that's driving the habit, right? So if I imagine myself on the couch at 8 p.m. and my brain is like, okay, I know intellectually I don't want to overeat, but I just feel a little bit like I'm eating against my own will. Just reminding yourself, this isn't a more motivation, more willpower solution. This is just restlessness driving this habit. This is just my restlessness again. I've just memorized the emotion of restlessness right now. Or maybe fill in the blank for what the emotion is for you. This is my anxiousness again. This is me being stressed out again. This is me being frustrated again. And then what you want to do is you want to describe that emotion so that you're teaching your brain and your body that this is simply an emotion in my body and I have control over this emotion. It does not control me. And I am not in this moment going to answer that emotion. I'm not going to distract myself from this emotion with food. And when you stop answering it and stop rewarding it with food, you actually unmemorize it. It's how we change neurons in our brain. It's how we change how they connect and how they fire together and wire together. And when we prune off and kind of cut the ties between old habits that we have habituated by pruning away different neurons, it's how we become a different version of ourselves. It's how you become the naturally thin version of you. And so what you're doing when you're doing this is you're using your thinking brain when you're describing an emotion in your body, when you're describing restlessness in your body to yourself. You're using your thinking brain, you're using your neocortex to watch the emotion in your body. So rather than your body running the show and you seemingly getting up off the couch to get more snacks, feeling a little bit like you're eating against your own will, when you're just watching your body experience restlessness, your brain is then saying to your body, hey, restlessness, I see you. I see you feeling restless there and I see you wanting some snacks to distract yourself. But we're just not going to do that right now. I see you, restlessness, for what you are. Restlessness, you are a vibration in my body and you are not controlling me. You're just vibrating. And how you do this, how you experience and watch the restlessness in a way that is not painful, is you simply describe it to yourself with neutral, objective language. And so when you're doing this, you're turning on the frontal lobe in your brain. You're watching yourself think, you're watching yourself feel. You're kind of just being the observer and the watcher of your own brain and body. So you just want to ask yourself these questions to watch yourself experience, let's say, restlessness, right? You fill in the emotion for you. And you may ask yourself some of these questions like, where are you in my body? Restlessness. And the restlessness might be in your chest. And you may ask yourself, how is it vibrating? What's the frequency of the vibration like? Is it fast or slow? What's the amplitude like? Is it high or is it smaller amplitude? What is the texture of it like? Is it rough? Is it smooth? What's the viscosity of it like? Is it thick like molasses? Or is it airy and fluttery like butterfly wings? Is it like guitar strings in my chest? Or is it like a thick rubber band? Is it like sunshine beaming out of my body? And you just want to ask yourself these questions like, what is the texture? Where is it? What's the viscosity of it like? Does it move? Does it have a color? Simply to put distance between you watching it and your body feeling it. This is how you start to feel an immense amount of calm control. And the point of doing this is when you ask yourself these questions, you're using your prefrontal lobe within your neocortex. You're using that thinking part of your brain. You're using your very evolved human brain to watch yourself have an experience. And when you're doing that, you're showing your brain and you're showing your body this restlessness is not auto-driving my habit anymore. Restlessness is not the one running the show right now. Even though it has maybe been subconsciously, right now it's not in that moment because I'm watching myself have an emotional experience. And it is how you stop and interrupt that memorized emotion of restlessness drive the habit of snacking. And if during this process you find yourself feeling like you go very much back up into your overanalyzing brain, like, am I doing this right? And I'm not doing this right. And I don't care. And like, I don't like this. And I just want to eat the snacks, or like anything that becomes very heady, all you want to do is come back to being in your body and watching yourself experience the feeling, the emotion of restlessness. And how I usually start that is I'm like, okay, I hear you, brain, but I'm just going to come back. Restlessness. Where are you in my body? And watch that emotion vibrate in your body, and you will watch it start to dissipate. And as you do this, what happens then is you create a memory of that experience for yourself. You're very present, watching yourself feel an emotion. You watch it. You bring a lot of neutral, objective language to it. And the key is to be very neutral and objective about it, because you don't want to tell yourself that there's something to be afraid of in the vibration of restlessness. I love thinking about how would I tell a little kid who's never experienced restlessness what it feels like without freaking them out. And so you tell yourself and you watch yourself feel this emotion. And because you're very present with that emotion and you describe it in detail with very neutral, objective language, you watch it dissipate. You watch how maybe you don't even want to eat the food anymore. You create a memory for yourself. And you feel really proud and you feel really accomplished and you feel really relaxed. And those emotions of pride and accomplishment and relaxation and sort of like wonder and awe create a memory for you. Those emotions will store the memory of that experience for you. And you'll have this memory of like, oh yeah, remember I felt restless sitting on the couch at 8 p.m. and I changed my habit and it actually wasn't painful. And you create that memory and you're going to be more willing to do it again. And you go and you do it again and you create another memory. And you go and you do it again, and that starts to become the habit where you stop answering emotions that feel uncomfortable with eating. So much so that you start to develop the skill of being a person that knows how to feel their feelings. To be the person that feels in control of your eating habits, that feels a calm sense of control of your own mind and body. A person who stops being someone who ever eats against your own will. And when you interrupt your habits, your brain notices that you're out of your routine. So your brain, when it's creating that memory, it's like, oh, this is the habit where you usually eat all the snacks at 8 p.m. when you're feeling restless. And it's almost like you have changed the TV channel. And you do this and you practice this skill and you show yourself, oh, it's actually not painful. And it's like you have changed the theoretical TV channel from the 8 p.m. restless snacking habit to the calm, present, relaxed, enjoying your TV show without a snack habit. And your brain's like, what's happening here? And that's where that memory comes in. And that's why you want to keep repeating this process so that you just become the person that doesn't need snacks to escape restlessness. And sometimes it might feel like you want to go back to the old familiar theoretical TV channel. And what you want to do is you want to ask yourself, okay, but what is it like in this new TV channel where I don't need the food to escape my restlessness? Maybe this new channel is like a feeling of excitement and freedom and calm and relaxation. Maybe this new TV channel, even though it's unfamiliar and even though it's a little different than what I'm used to, maybe it's like 10 times more exciting than my old habit of eating at 8 p.m. and not feeling great, going to bed and waking up in the morning. And the only way to know if that new, quote unquote, theoretical TV channel is where you want to stay is to actually go through this process of breaking the habit and developing the new one. And as you go and you do this over and over again, and especially because you do this once and you see that it's not painful and you create that memory and your brain's like, that was actually way easier than I thought. It actually wasn't nearly as painful as I thought. And even the discomfort that I thought I was going to experience was not really that uncomfortable after all. And you repeat that and you repeat that and you repeat that, and you become this beer, right? You go from thinking to doing to being. And it's how it becomes innate, how you become the person where it doesn't matter who's around you, what food is around you, where you are, what social experience you're having, what restaurant you're at, whether or not you're on vacation. None of that ever matters. because you never ever want to feel physically uncomfortable. You just become the naturally thin version of you. And it is how now I am just the person who doesn't think about food unless I'm hungry. How I never want to feel uncomfortable. How I just am being the naturally thin version of me. I am just a naturally thin beer. I'm not a thinker or a doer. I'm just a beer. And it's why so many women who have never struggled with their weight, who have never dieted and kind of gone down the obsessive rabbit hole that so many of us have with dieting and exercising, people and women who have been naturally thin their whole life, it's why they cannot understand and explain to other people how to do it, because it's just always been a part of them. And they've never had to unlearn anything to the contrary, right? It would be the same as like asking someone like, okay, but can you teach me how to walk? They would be a little bit like, you just sort of do it, right? And maybe for someone, I don't know, this would be an interesting experiment for someone who has walked and then maybe had a brain injury or gone through some traumatic event that they then don't know how to walk and then has to relearn how to walk. They may be able to teach people how to walk, right? But the person that just grew up always knowing how to walk because they learned it as a child and they never learned anything or had anything come into the contrary, they're just a walker. We as humans are designed to be naturally thin. We as humans are designed to feel energized and alive and vibrant. We're designed to only think about food when we're hungry. We're not designed to desire so much food that we feel physically uncomfortable. We're designed to be naturally thin. It's how we are meant to eat and live. You only picked up ways of thinking about hunger. You only picked up ways of eating. You only picked up habitual behaviors that didn't serve you either in your childhood or through your diet history that are to the contrary of being naturally thin. So being naturally thin isn't about thinking more. It's about feeling more. Embracing those feelings that your body has memorized that are driving the habits that you don't want. Because then when you do this and you set those emotions off to the side, you set those emotions that are running the show, that are driving your eating habits that aren't serving you, then you get to ask yourself, okay, what emotion do I want to have instead? What emotion comes flooding in when you go through the process I just described to you, when you watch yourself experience an emotion? What emotion comes in without you even needing to think about it? What emotion does your body now have space for? If it's not being consumed by restlessness or stress or anxiety, and it's not memorizing pressure to go throughout the day, then maybe there's more room for joy and gratitude and love. And I know for me, those emotions of pride and accomplishment and relaxation and joy and gratitude and compassion, it's almost like they just come flooding in when I watch myself experience emotions to the contrary. It's almost as if joy and gratitude and love are the natural emotional state that my body wants to be in. All I need to do is to make room for them and make space for them. And how I do that is I teach my brain and I teach my body that this restlessness and this pressure, it's not actually necessary. It doesn't need to drive this habitual eating habit. So that then I make room in my body for the joy and the love and the gratitude and the pride and for whatever emotions that you want. And the craziest thing also happens, and I hear from so many of you both in the Naturally Thin for Life program and not in the Naturally Thin for Life program yet, is that you want to feel more present. And when you go through what I shared with you in this episode, you are teaching yourself to be present in that moment, even with an emotion that maybe you want to release yourself of, that you want to unmemorize, that you want to unlearn. And the more and more you do this, the more and more present you become throughout your day. And I have been practicing this for several years, and I've been taking it to the next level for myself in this presence practice. And listen, the wildest thing has been happening. I can't quite articulate it. I can't quite teach it yet, but this level of presence that I now have, I get way more done than I ever have. I mean, way more done. And it's not fueled with franticness. It's not fueled with pressure. It's not fueled with that like tense, tight, oh, I gotta get stuff done. It is a level of production that is almost incomprehensible to my brain. And it's such an enjoyable experience. And part of it is because I just know how to be present. So friends, I want you to show yourself that habit change does not need to be painful by implementing what you learned in this podcast episode. And so many of you I know, because I'm the same way. I love to learn. I love to consume content. I love to learn new things. And learning feels so good. And learning is supposed to feel good so that we keep learning, right? As humans, we want to keep learning new things, having new experiences. So we have this desire to learn. And it does feel good. And it does feel like we're making progress when we're learning and when we have knowledge. And the knowledge and the learning is the precursor to change. Hear me on that? It's the precursor. It's not the actual change. You need to have the knowledge and the learning, but you must put it into action and actually have the experience of the change. So you can understand everything I shared with you in this podcast episode, but if you don't go then and implement it with a habit that you want to change and show yourself through actual lived experience how to have painless habit change, it will only stay in that neocortex. It will only stay in the intellectual part of your brain. It won't actually make its way all the way through to your cerebellum, where you become the person who just is naturally thin, where you become the person who just has the behaviors and the automatic way of thinking and feeling and eating that truly serve you. So when you go to put it into action, the only reason most people learn, and don't actually make a change is because when you go to make a change, when you go to put it into action, what's going to happen? You're going to have an old habitual memorized emotion come up. But when you know how to feel that emotion, feel that feeling in your body with the process I gave you by describing it with neutral, objective language, that is how you make a change. So understand this, learn it, and then friends, I strongly urge you to go and to put it into action. All right. I hope you all have an amazing week. And if you are enjoying the podcast, getting a lot out of it, please take a minute to write a review and leave a review. That helps other women find the podcast too. And like you heard me mention earlier, come to the live training if you listen to this episode in real time, where we can dive deeper into breaking any eating habit. You can get any questions answered and I can coach you live on that live training as well. And if you really want to take this to the next level, come join me in the Naturally Thin for Life program, where you learn to implement everything you learn. You go to actually create the lifelong habit changes so that you just are the beer. You are the naturally thin version of you. So much so that you don't even have to think about it. All right, my friends, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I will talk with you all next week. Friend, if you are loving what you are learning here on the podcast, you have to come check out my Naturally Thin for Life program. It is my on-demand lifetime access program where I teach you brand new concepts not taught here on the podcast. And I will walk you through exactly how to implement all of the tools I teach you here so that they become just a part of you. You will learn exactly how to understand your specific brain and your specific body so that you become naturally thin for the rest of your life and you no longer struggle with your weight. Inside of the Naturally Thin for Life program, you can also receive live help so that you consistently make progress and reach your goal. I will teach you how to accelerate your naturally thin journey in a sustainable way so that the change becomes permanent. The best part is that it's risk-free. You either love it or I will give you your money back. If you are ready to finally be naturally thin for life, join us at lauradixoncoaching.com/work with me. That's LAURADIXON coaching.com and click on the Work With Me tab. I cannot wait to see you there.